Alrighty, and welcome to episode 1 of Inside the Nest, where I talk everything Westfield State Athletics. I'm your host, Zach Peters. I'll be breaking down the biggest moments, some standout performances, and everything you want to know about Westfield State Athletics. A little bit about me. I do the broadcasting here for Westfield State Athletics. I'll call the games. I'll do the color commentary mainly, and then play-by-play as well. I did a lot of fall games, mainly soccer, women's and men's soccer. Had a blast doing that. And what the point of this show is to get athletes on and kind of highlight Westfield State Athletics. We may get coaches on, athletes, and maybe even some of the broadcasters that I work with. But yeah, should definitely be a fun show. Today is kind of an introduction show where I'll be kind of talking about fall sports, kind of an overview of how those seasons went for the Owls. Talk a little bit about winter. They're kind of just kicking off, kind of getting to the midpoint of the season. And today's actually the last day of classes for the fall semester. So I'll be continuing this show next semester in the spring, which will be around mid-January, late January. So it's good to get the ground running here. So first I'm going to kind of get into kind of what this show is about. Obviously, we're going to highlight some athletes, some standout performances, and just talk about kind of what each sport is doing, how their season is going. And first I'm going to start with, obviously, fall sports. Let's start with football. They finished the 2025 season with a 3-7 record, 3-6 in their conference, in the MASCAC conference. So it wasn't good enough to make the playoffs. And something that they really kind of struggled with was offensively, turning the ball over, a lot of fumbles, a lot of interceptions. But this team was kind of held together by their defense. Thanks to Butter Ferreira, Justin Gardner. They were a big part of that team, and they kind of kept them into it. Even though the Owls offense did average 285 yards per game, 172.9 rushing, 112 passing, and scored roughly 21.7 points. And you see that stat line, and you're probably thinking, wow, that's a solid performance there each game. But, obviously when you give up turnovers, you give the ball over, that kind of puts your team back, kind of up against the fence. So, they did have a good season. I mean, they started the season with a close loss to Castleton, 16-12, which, if you don't remember, that game was called because of a tornado warning, actually. Very interesting weather we're getting here in New England. I mean, it's already started to a very cold winter. But yeah, that game was unfortunately called due to weather. Westfield did pick up some mid-season wins against Dean College, 48-6, and then Worcester State, 31-22. I was happy to call those games where they beat Worcester, and that was a very entertaining back and forth game. But they did have some tough losses. One to Bridgewater, Anna Maria, Framingham State, Plymouth State, and UMass Dartmouth. I remember the Anna Maria game. That was more of a blowout. I mean, I feel like that's where we kind of saw the turnovers, and that's where we saw the struggles from the Owls. And then close losses to Framingham and Plymouth State. But yeah, I mean, they had a decent season overall. They did end the season on a high note, beating Fitchburg 10-7 on the road. So always good to end the season on a win. And they're looking to get back at it, obviously, next season. I have a buddy that's on the football team who is a junior, so hopefully we'll get him on the show, which will be good. But let's move on, talk about men's soccer. They also had a pretty impressive season. It didn't end how they wanted it to. They ended the season 10-4-4, in a conference record of 5-1-2 in the MASCAC. So pretty good overall in the MASCAC. They did win the MASCAC tournament semifinal game 3-0 over Worcester State, thanks to a big second half. They scored most of their points in that second half, but then they were eventually eliminated by Mass Maritime, where they fell 5-2 after a second half rally from the Buccaneers. I remember doing I believe it was either a football game or I forget what game it was I was calling, but at the same time, Mass Maritime and Westfield State was playing each other in the men's championship game. And I remember watching that and seeing Maritime kind of rally late and just coming away with the victory over the Owls. So kind of a devastating loss there, but they're looking to bounce back next year. I know they have a lot of upcoming freshmen, and they have all that young talent to bring them into next season. And now we'll obviously now go into women's soccer, and they won the MASCAC championship. That was exactly what they wanted to do, and they did it. They had a little interesting of a regular season, a 9-6-6 overall record, 6 ties, which is very, very crazy to see. You don't normally see that many ties, but they were 6-0-2 in the MASCAC, so didn't take a MASCAC loss, which was so pivotal for the rest of their season and put their team in a good position, going forward into the MASCAC tournament. Obviously, how I said, they won the MASCAC championship over Worcester. Olivia Crooks was the one who scored the winning goal where they won 1-0. And, they went to the NCAA championship game, but ended up losing first round. But I believe, that season was an overall success, taking, the MASCAC championship home. Another team that took home the MASCAC championship and who was very dominant was the women's field hockey team. They were very dominant. I only got to call one of their games. I wasn't mainly on field hockey. I was mainly more on soccer, but the one chance I did get to call, I just saw how dominant and impressive that team was. They got a key victory over Bridgewater State 3-1, which kind of set them up for success. They had a lot of freshmen, like Caroline Andrade, who was very phenomenal throughout the season. But they did have a 7-1 loss and over Keene State and a 5-0 loss to Western New England. And those were like out of conference games. So obviously those don't matter as much compared to MASCAC games, but it's still good to kind of get that experience. But great season overall. They were very dominant. I believe they had a winning streak of about 13 or 14 games, which is so impressive. So great season by them. And then going over to volleyball, they actually gave Westfield the Smith Cup with a perfect 7-0 conference mark. So that's their standout. We don't really call volleyball for some reason, but they had a very impressive season. Obviously to take the Smith Cup is very important. And then going over to cross country, they also were MASCAC champions. The women's cross country team, that's their 4th straight season with the MASCAC championship, so that's very impressive. And then they earned the maximum points for the Smith Cup. And the men's cross country team did finish runner up. It's kind of they're in the women's cross country's shadow in a way, but still a very successful season by them. Overall, Westfield State Athletics captured the 2025 Howard C. Smith Cup for the 5th consecutive year in a row across all MASCAC sports. So that's very impressive. Owls want to keep it going, though. They don't want to stop short. So, so impressive fall season for Westfield State Athletics. Now we'll get into winter sports, where we're currently in the current season we are in. Fall is a lot more hectic because there is a lot more sports going on, whereas basketball is a little bit more tamed. But we'll get right into men's basketball, where they have a 5-2 record. They have yet to play a MASCAC game. They're still 0-0, so a lot of non-conference games, but they've answered very well, and they've played teams very, very hard, and that's showed by their 5-2 record. They were originally 4-0 on the season, but then taking two straight losses, one against Amherst, who was a very tough opponent, but that was a very close game. The Owls' first MASCAC game of the season comes on January 7th against Framingham State, so stay tuned for that. The Owls average about 83.5 points per game, roughly 49.2% from the field goal percentage, 32.3% from the three-point line, 42.5 rebounds per game, 18.5 assists per game. And when you think of the Owls basketball team, the one highlight that always comes around is Kenny Rogers. He scores about 22 points per game. He's just a very overall great player, and he's only a sophomore, which is the most impressive thing. And there's always talks about if he's going to go elsewhere and go to a higher, performing school like a Division II or Division I team. But it seems like he's got a tight-knit group that he wants to stay around. So that's always a good thing especially for Westfield State Athletics. Of course we want him to stay here. But he's such a good player. And the Owls will actually face off against Wentworth tonight at 7 p.m. on the road in Wentworth. So stay tuned for that. I believe that's the only game we've got today. But yeah, they've had a lot of non-conference games, and they'll get that MASCAC play coming in early January. So stay tuned for that. And for women's basketball, it's pretty similar to men's. They have a 7-2 record. They have yet to play any MASCAC games, but their first game is the same date as the men's, January 7th against Framingham. Women's basketball, they're led by Grace Wigington, who averages about 19.2 points per game and has a total of 128 points per game, even though she didn't play in the Owls' last game, so might be dealing with an injury, so hopefully we'll see her soon. They average about 72 points per game, 33 points from the field goal percentage, 24 from the three-point line, about 40 rebounds per game, and 13 assists per game. And yeah, they're a very tight-knit group. You see players like Morgan Berthium, who was actually a star soccer player too for the Owls in the fall. And she's carried that over into women's basketball. So she's trying to get 2 MASCAC championships under her belt in one season for 2 sports. But the Owls did come off a 74-70 victory last night against Sage. So good win by them to improve to 7-2. Their next game will take place tomorrow, December 13th at 1 p.m. against Nichols College. That game will be on the road. So yeah, now moving forward into men's ice hockey. I just called their last game last night. Later started around 7:35. Game ended around, I want to say 10:15. So a long night, but especially because that game went into overtime. But currently, I'll get into that game a little bit later. But currently, the Owls are 7-4, 3-1 in the MASCAC. So showing a strong start there. Those are the most pivotal games of the season, is of course the conference play. They're averaging about 4.2 goals per game and 33.8 shots per game. So the strength for the Owls is their quickness, and they're able to kind of create space and give their teammates an open shot at net, as you see those 33.8 points per game, or shots per game, excuse me. But yeah, they did come off a thriller of a win last night, 5-4 in overtime. Julian Bosclair was the one who scored that game winner. I was, fortunate enough to call that game. I was doing the color commentary, joined with Dino Stellano, who did the play-by-play. Hopefully we'll get him on. He's a character. He's a great kid. He would be awesome to get on the show. But yeah, they've had some interesting games. I feel like at Amelia Park, you'll see the most entertaining hockey games there. They were up 2-0 to start early, getting a power play goal. Williams scored the second goal of the game, and then they were going against Assumption, the Greyhounds, and they battled back, and they tied it up 2-2 going into the second half. And then ultimately it was a 4-4 game. I mean, it was originally 4-3 in favor of Assumption. And then the Owls just fought back, and they ended up getting the win. And it was a very back and forth game. A lot of got very, very chippy in a way, got very physical. Both teams were very fast. So that will cause big hits, especially in the corner of the boards. But good job by the ice hockey team to get that victory. And then the women's swimming team, normally it's swimming and diving, but they don't have any divers this year, just swimmers. There's a lot of freshman talent. They earned first place at the Bridgewater State Invitational, so good early win by them. But yeah, they're mainly driven by those freshmen, and they're looking to just keep their season going. They have a few standouts there. But yeah, they contribute across freestyle, breaststroke, backstroke, and relay events, and that's how they score points. They'll have duels, and they'll have bigger, essentially, tournaments on the weekends. I mean, I was a wrestler, so that was kind of the similar format that I was used to competing in high school. And then we'll talk about indoor track and field. Their star performer is Eliza Lee. She was just awarded MASCAC Field Player of the Week, so shout out to her. The women's cross country, women's track and field, they know how to win, and they'll compete in events featuring sprinters, distant runners, field event athletes who post top marks in 60 meters, 200 meters, 800 meters, long jump, high jump, which results in meet to meet. But they've had an impressive season to start. So it's good to see all sports doing well. In winter, it's tougher. Obviously, the weather gets colder, but these athletes stay strong, and they're performing at such a high level too. So, and then a part of the show I want to get into is we'll do an Owl of the Week, so a standout player, and this one is going to go to Kenny Rogers of the men's basketball team. I was fortunate enough to call his game where he performed a triple-double. He had 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. They took a big victory against Kobe Sawyer. And yeah, that's the Owl of the Week. But what you guys listening can stay tuned to is, seeing athletes come on the show. I'll be interviewing them, maybe even coaches as well, other broadcasters that I've worked with, like Dino Stellano, Zach Bianco, Evan Levereau, maybe even Cody too. Cody's a busy guy, but maybe get him on here. He's a great announcer, great talker. So yeah, that's going to probably do it for the show. This was episode 1, so I know it was a little bit shorter, but thank you for joining me on Inside the Nest. I've been Zach Peters. Thank you.